welcome to all those who are online. I think there are about 10 people and those who are here. Now, our objective today is to have a global view of the voluntary national review process to which Malaysia has presented two reports, 2016 and 2021. And we are told that government is going to present 2025. Nanti mungkin ada taklimat or some briefing, announcement of the process. So government introduces a process for feedback. Many of us in CSOs and also in the Secretariat were involved in both the preparation of the VNR in 2016. I was present in New York when it was presented and we asked some questions. Alizan was also there, Lavanya and Yoklin and a few other people. And in 2021, because it was the COVID period, we actually had more opportunities because everything was online. And Datuk Mustafa Muhammad was the minister. Somebody is making some noises, is it? So you can block it. The one. So that was 2021. So for 2025, government will announce the process, but we thought it will be helpful for civil society to have an opportunity, including academic institutions, private sector, to have some input into the process. And what do we do to prepare for that so that our papers are not just emotive, it's much more in detail. Now, the occasion came about because Dr. Ujita was traveling and coming, and I know him, I think Indrani know him, and a few other people here know Ujita, and so he has been actively involved, one at the global level, as well as the Sri Lanka level on SDGs, and I have visited his office when he was advisor to the minister on SDG. Sri Lanka has a special legislation on SDG and set up a ministry on SDG that particular time he was there. So we are using this occasion to have some feedback, some discussion, have a global picture, and so forth. Later, I think Azad will give a more formal introduction to him, but we get some idea. Now, Ujita felt that people need to tell who's around in the room. So I think it will be helpful if I started from this side and ask people, just say your name and organization, pass around. You need both because online.
Hi everyone, my name is Fendi. I'm from the Institute of Strategic and National Studies Malaysia. I'm Malaysia, the good activity, not the bad activity.
Hello, hi, I'm Panir from APPTM.
Hi everyone, I'm Jega from TJUB Global Printing.
Just one thing about your involvement in the SDGs so that I know who's in the room, not just the name and the organization.
What is SDG? I'm the environmental lead for the Malaysia CSO Alliance, and I work a lot on the interface between policy and research
Good.
for environment and climate change and resolve. So directly related to work in SDG 30, 26, 14, and 15.
The 2021 document, which is on the website, Google it, you get it. Actually, you edited it, compile and put some, some big
Hi, I'm Kennedy Michael. I'm from the Alliance at River 3. We're the only rim care organization in the entire Malaysia that is actively implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. I think some of you may know that we push SDG education in schools, and recently we won quite a number of SDG awards. Doesn't really mean anything. I'm more interested in how can we roll out the SDG and steamroll the Prime Minister to practice the SDGs in truth, not in words. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Indrani and I represent POMCA, the Federation of Malaysian Consumers Association. I'm the current lead for poverty and social well-being under the National CSO SDG Alliance. We predominantly work on SDG 12, I would say, which is on sustainable consumption, but of course we touch on SDG 1, 2, 3, I think everything that's related to consumption, so poverty, well-being, food, everything else.
Good afternoon, Assalamualaikum. My name is Azimil Manaf from the National SDG Center under the Ministry of Economy. So we are the body that monitors the implementation and the initiative of the SDGs by the government.
Okay, great.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon, selamat petang, Dr. Davidson and as well as Dr. Uchida. I'm Saleh from University of Malaysia Sabah. We actually the impact evaluator for the Sabah West. Okay, thank you.
Assalamualaikum. Very good day to everyone. So I'm a finalist with Dr. Saleh and our leader, Dr. Jay. We are in fact represented for the Sabah West region. Part of that, me and as well Dr. Saleh, Dr. Jay, we are also actively doing the research in the land. Yes,
Hello, I'm Zoel from the Secretariat of APBGM SDG.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good afternoon. How do I get involved into this APBGM SDG? Because previously I was the director for Center for Sustainable Society Engagement, which is the most important center in UMS when related to the community engagement. And I'm also one of the directors under Ministry of Higher Education to evaluate, to do the knowledge transfer project for the state of Sabah. Because of that, Prof. Dato' Rosila took me into the impact development, one of the team members. And currently, I'm actually one of the resource person for FPPGM for Sabah. And sustainability is one of my I can share my expert subject matters in University of Sabah and the Faculty of Business, Economics and Accountancy.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Pan. I'm one of the solution providers for FPGM and also the governance lead for the CSO SDG Alliance. Yeah, we focus normally on B40, the poverty area, but we also look at the sustainable city. But more important is the partnership which we are promoting on advocacy. And what we've been doing is since the local agenda 21, we've been advocating for whole society approach.
Hello everyone, I'm Sue from APBGM SDG.
On Sin from Yayasan Kajian Pembangunan Masyarakat.
The foundation.
Okay, hi everyone. Ilawarison from CSO Platform for Reform.
Hello again, I'm Zina here from CSO Platform for Reform.
Those online, we wanted you, if you like to introduce yourself.
Hello, hi Prof. Hi everyone. I'm Subarna from University of Nottingham, Malaysia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kalash. I'm with CSO Platform for Reform.
Assalamualaikum, selamat petang. My name is Siti. I'm from Treat Every Environment Special Trees.
Hi, I'm Gabriel. I'm from Sarawak CSO SDG Alliance. We represent about 70 over NGO CSO in Sarawak. And currently we're working on 7 thematics, which is gender, education, poverty, indigenous, governance. I forgot the rest, but there's 7 of them that we're working on with all the respective NGOs in Sarawak. Good to be here. Thank you, APBGM. Thank you, Dato'.
WWF Malaysia. I'm based in KK office here in Sabah. So WWF is currently the secretariat for Sabah CSO SDG Alliance. So I'm joining on behalf of the team for this virtual meeting. Thank you for inviting.
Hi everyone, Lisa here from Sunway University. I am part of the Central 1 team, soon to be rebranded to Central 4, part of the APPGM SDG group.
Hello, I'm Firdaus. I'm actually in front of Lisa. I'm also from Central 1, will be Central 4.
Hi, Dato. Yeah, this is Michelle here from Yayasan My SDG.
Okay.
Actually, I'm on the medical, but I'm just joining, since I've been
Okay.
invited. Yeah, Yayasan My SDG actually set up to mobilize and manage the trust fund to accelerate the SDGs in Malaysia. In the main is Malaysia UN SDG Trust Fund.
Yes.
It's a multi-donor funding platform in collaboration with United Nations in Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, before I pass to Ujita, I wanted either Onsen or Jeffrey to say a few words. So maybe who would like to? Okay, then let Jeffrey say first, and Jeffrey has to leave a bit early. So then later. The reason for this is we didn't want to assume that the APPGM Secretariat would take the lead for civil society feedback. So we wanted civil society to take the lead. So I was then looking at the list and then seeing who will come early to say a few words. So Jeffrey, if you can, just a few words so that it'll set the context of civil society, the alliance and so forth.
Yeah, thank you very much for this honor to say a few words. Yeah, the CSO of course plays a very major role in transformation and for the adopting of the SDG and all. But of course, working together is another thing altogether. So I'm actually quite excited regarding this people's review because earlier on, we have got the national review, which is so high level, and then later on we have got a local review, and this is where a lot of our local authorities took the opportunity to showcase the things that they've done. All right, but for us as NGOs, we feel that at the bottom, where things are actually happening and affecting the top, we are really realizing that sometimes what is said may not reflect what is on the ground. All right, so I was saying that we should have a voluntary community review. But now that I find that it is actually the same time as the people's review. So I feel that this is really good because the thing is, as we start working on the people's review, it's actually a counter check, check balance as well, on what is said on the local review and what is said on the higher side as well. So I think we are really taking a whole of society approach on this. And of course, all these things will propel genuinely the progress of SDGs. So as CFO, Alliance and representing NGOs, I think there's a very important role that we can play at all the different levels, but the biggest say at the people's review. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Danko. Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey, for the beautiful opening speech. So, without further ado, I would like now to introduce our esteemed speakers today, Mr. Jihadi Zoisa. His insight will be invaluable as we embark on this journey together today. A little background about Mr. Uchida. Okay, he is the chairman and chairman of the Global Sustainability Solutions Class, Principal SDG Transformation Lab. He is also the Executive Director, Center for Environment and Development, CED. He has served as Sri Lanka's Chief Negotiator for the UN Sustainable Development Goals and Advisor to the Ministry of Sustainable Development and Wildlife. These are some of his achievements, and if I go into deeper, we won't start the event because it's so long. And for such a great person, and I don't want to waste time, I'll pass the mic to Mr. Yoshida.
Thank you. Again, one of my oldest colleagues in the process, Indrani, I still remember when I was given the task of conducting the first ever sustainable consumption review for Asia. Indrani through Consumers International was the partner for us. That was long time ago, and we were young, and my knees are aching. I'm wearing knee braces now, Indrani, and we have not met for a long time. Guys, thank you so much. For those who don't know me, I come from the civil society sector as well as a young activist creating the largest ever people's movement my country has seen from then to today. Probably that part Denison did not know. Over 1,000 groups in the early 90s creating, writing the first ever citizens report of the country when none of those things were involved. And my first ever international conferencing roommate was Martin Kokok-Peng in Geneva for the preparatory committee meeting on the first Earth Summit. So from then onwards, I spoke to Gurmeet Singh maybe after about 35 years today. By the way, I was young. He was old. They were old. I'm still young. Okay. My knees are aching. That's a different story. You were wagging your head all the way. We try to keep on. But pretty good to see younger people in the room as well, because that is something that the baton passing has not happened. This is what I would like to do. You will be changing, I guess, because I don't have the slide changer and you don't trust me with the slide changer. Okay. Let's make it full because there's a lot of details. Can you make it full, please, screen? Thank you. Let me start here because this is a group of people who are very well aware of the SDGs. You don't want to make it full screen? Good enough? Okay, it's up to you, but the details are going to be very hard on this level, right? Just we'll read this out. The UN scientific community recognition of the voluntary people's review. I will then go into the details what this is all about. The VPR methodology and process has received the highest recognition by the UN scientific community as well. The joint statement on, I'll read it from this, on harnessing scientific evidence decision-making to accelerate the SDGs, to the first ever Science Day held to accelerate progress on the SDGs. That was co-authored by the Stockholm Environment Institute, the UN Development Programme, the International Science Council, and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, has recognized the value to the world of the Voluntary People's Review in Sri Lanka. It states, page 5, encourage independent evaluation. Civil society and research organizations should hold national and local governments accountable for their SDG commitments. One way to do this is by undertaking systematic reviews of the impacts of interventions now underway, such as the Voluntary People's Review in Sri Lanka, and embedded mechanisms for learning and adjusting in decision-making and policy planning. I thought I will state this first. I met the chair of the scientific committee appointed by the Secretary General to review the midterm, conduct the midterm review as well. I will talk about it as well. So next slide, please. Had a little discussion yesterday. My primary work coming here was to work on a methodology for the voluntary parliamentarians review. Yeah, you're the main man. For the parliamentarians review. And I just asked Denison whether, I know that there's a voluntary national review happening by the government, and I do understand the sensitivities going around and how CSOs would be organizing themselves. I'll give a background next as to why. There are few things I've written down, certain statements I have made globally during different periods of time. But the first part is that at the midterm review shows that, well, at least on that assessment, shows that we are about 12% of all the SDGs on track to achieve by 2030. That too, in my opinion, is an overstatement, because I discussed this with the scientific committee chair in Brussels when I met her. That is a linear assessment, target to indicator assessment. not taking in the interlinkages count and the trade-offs that happens between them. Of course, there is a gap of data, but then what constitutes data, whether data democracy does exist in the world, and that who defines data, who defines what is not data is another issue. And I will show you probably at the end what we are doing, how we are working with government also to bring things together. So I was momentarily excited by Future Summit, thought that I will finally rejoin the process, but then I thought maybe there are better things to do in life, and that proved to be that the Future Summit had nothing to do with the future rather than annexing few post thoughts and afterthoughts into a world that needs lot more attention than well, my first understanding was when the first Earth Summit 1992 came in, and 1991 was convened as the last chance to save the Earth. And since then, I was very young, and since then, I've grown old fighting the same battle and more battles. And those I know who are in the room would know that the battles are harder now. But then what you keep on doing, you'll have to wait for my cue before you change the slides, please. Thank you. Otherwise, everybody's going to lose the sequence. Let me say, no, you need to go back. Or give it to me, that's something that works. Can I use this? Huh? Okay, that's working. So I just thought in the morning, and I will try to see, given the context and the time limit that we have, is the SDGs and the state of the world. I did put this slide together around, I think, 3:30 or 4 in the morning today. The SDGs don't operate out of the context of the world, state of the world. It must operate within it, and SDGs can't be reported out of context, and it must have the context very clearly defined. So first thing is maybe to establish where the world is. Then second thing that was asked by me by the team here when they met me 2 days before is about where the VNRs are and what do the independent reviews do, what kind of what is the global status on this, and then the getting into the VPR methodology, what a voluntary people's review, because this is the first time when we introduced in 2018. Methodology for monitoring, review, and follow-up and implementation, what a VNR needs to do, and when a VNR does not do it, what do independent sectors have to do? That's a critical question. I've tried to understand different countries, different governments, trying to work with them, with the OECD, with UNDESA, with UNESCAP, and so on and so forth. Then the people and the processes, how they go into recalibrate, and the current status shows that the recalibration for the transformation challenge is required. The recalibration was expected in 2016 through the process, understanding a 2030 agenda, coming up with the 17 goals, 169 targets, 240 indicators, which came 1.5–2 years later, which looks like, which means that it was not a scientifically evolved process, but more a politically evolved process. So that is what I wanted to say. And I've made these statements. I'm not going to read it, but let me move on. So this is what I would like to do today before we go into the lab sessions, which is also new. I only got to know before lunch, just during lunch or before lunch during the previous session, that there is no particular process still by the civil society groups in a collective for an independent process. But one thing that is sure is that Malaysia's government is presenting a VNR in 2025. That is understanding, which means it's a benchmark for all the others to get their act also together fast and work on it. And I will try to give some examples. In Sri Lanka, late in 2015, once Sri Lanka signed up on the 2030 agenda, there was a new government in place which was called the Good Governance Government. We are trying to figure out still what good governance happened in the country. We all were very hopeful, and I was invited to become the Sustainable Development Advisor for the country because no one understood what the SDGs are. I mean, you could, this was a mystery box of complexity, and UN, you would know that if you have worked with the UN agencies, it was a larger mystery box for them. The only thing that they could talk about is 17 goals. 17 goals has no meaning. You can't tick boxes and say we have achieved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like that. And they try to do that with the MDGs, you remember. Well, in fact, when it took me 4 months to agree to do this on the job. Don't worry, I'll ask them to pass on all the slides. This is not private. I mean, these are commons and people can use it. The issue was that my work is more global before I took that in, and then I realized how global that a national process, defining a national process could be. And I didn't realize that Sri Lanka was the first country to have a sustainable development cabinet portfolio, which means that there was no blueprint to work on and had to do that. Before that, my work was mainly being part of the first ever People's Summit 1992 as a steering committee member with Martin, Chiok Ling. We were from Asia. There were big timers in it, Wangari Maathai, Anil Agarwal, India, Sunita Narain. It was a very idealistic time on earth, and those who have been in the circuit would know that we had great hope. We get great hope of changing the world. For whatever the reason, with all the aches and pains, I still believe that we have still hope. And a 12% on track only does not mean much to people who work to put their lives into transform, irrespective of what sector you come from. One of the things that I'm happy in the room is to see, at least I understood there's civil society, there's academia, there's government in this room. There are platforms, collective platforms in the room. I'm not sure whether I heard there's private sector in the room. No. So I will explain why, because for us, a stakeholder platform is a collective of all. It just can't be, and independent does not mean that it is somebody else takes one and criticizes the other. It is more an assessment that if you can work commonalities together, yes. If not, you're independent in your assessment and you make your representation as long as you can justify what you're saying. So that is basically how we would like to do this. And after I left, I promised only 1 year of my life to the process. I had to give 2 years because I was also not the chief negotiator for Sri Lanka, but I had to play a larger role with UN ESCAP in the region, setting up the Asia-Pacific region in the whole regional process at the high-level political forum. So that also went in. I will try to, I've knocked down a load of slides. Let me start here. One of the things in the aftermath of COVID-19 that we saw is that the Economic Forum started using this term holy crisis. Most of the discussions that we have seen on earth is how the economics or the financing communities talk about issues in silos. Fragmented, they will take one part and say, okay, this is the problem of the world. So the people, when they have problems of theirs, those are not problems of the world. Let's say the smaller the nation that you are, the insignificant your problems in a global agenda that says that leave no one behind. And which is a central principle of the 2030 agenda. So what does this mean is that finally they understand that when the economic system breaks down, it has its reasons in the breakdown in the social systems or the environmental systems or the governance systems. Now, this reality is when you keep on talking systems thinking, and this is why we are going into the 29th COP in Baku, 29th, I believe, in Baku. And I was excited to hear that the 30th one will be in Brazil, where I was born. Rio has been a funny place for me to be born, to be brought back to Sri Lanka, where I belong, and then going in 2012 to be on the steering committee of the civil society. Was anyone there in 1992 First Earth Summit in Rio? Anybody in the room? Okay, that makes me feel like a dinosaur. Yeah, I can say that at least you're siding with me on the age part of it. Okay, so yeah, so I've been through all the summits to understand that the summits have had good landscape, historical landscape for the discoursing. But whether we have had political commitment to do is a big problem. I understand that you are into climate research, and you would know that the planetary boundaries have been continuously breached, and we are at no returning point while we are talking all this nonsense. And going into another climate COP, which I don't go anymore. Those are hippie colonies for some funny parties that goes on. The problem with all of this is that I think what does a 2030 agenda mean anymore in the context of this? You're not now, even in government, you will have the environment ministry separate from the issues. The climate secretariat would be there doing the NDCs and so on. Then you will find the biodiversity secretariats doing the NBSAPs and whatever. Then you will find the civil society split also into that. Once in a while, you will find some private sector organization looking for an ESG aspect to plug on. But then you can see that the discussion has turned into climate financing more than adaptation or mitigation or whatever. And I will come to where the SDGs have got stuck as well. So if that is the discussion, we have to understand the discussion, irrespective of which sector we are in. I will come at the end and say, ultimately, SDG 17.4, I believe, talks about domestic resource mobilization for the implementing the SDGs. What does it mean? That you are ultimately, the countries, the governments, and their people are responsible for finding the money and implementing them. So these are things probably all of you have seen. One of the things, you're familiar with Wolfgang Sachs's this quote, is it? Let me read it out, which is very, I like it. Wolfgang Sachs says, despite alarming signs of failure throughout its history, the development syndrome has survived until today, but at the price of increasing senility. All along, the efficacy of development remained impervious to any counter evidence, but showed remarkable staying power, and the concept was repeatedly stretched until it includes both the strategy which inflicted the injury and the strategy designed for therapy. The strength of the concept, however, is also the reason for its galloping exhaustion. It no longer manifests any reactions to changing historical conditions. The tragic greatness of development consists in its monumental emptiness. Now, this is about development. And we keep on worrying that annexing sustainability in front of development is another tactic of stretching the, not the discourse, because sustainability discoursing and sustainable development discoursing are different, completely different. And our countries are nowhere closer to sustainability discoursing. Probably Bhutan, King, with the knowledge or without the knowledge of Father King, would come up with the GNH. And when the Rio Plus 20 was sinking and Tariq Banuri was the director of it, had to leave the process 6 months before because he had differences with the Undersecretary General who was in charge of ECOSOC. he joined our team and doing the voluntary people's treaties. Now, what we are looking at here is that, are we getting closer to sustainable development, which is a transformation? So what we do is the 1992 Agenda 21 or a agenda for a 21st century is dumped for a fast tracking for a 2030 from on a 15-year scale. How realistic can you do things simply because people had no commitment to an Agenda 21 that needed to be spreaded out. We have a 2030 goal, and then we have another goal, 2050, for the climate achievement. And there's no reference on, you can see the Kunming-Montreal agreement talking about 2030, 2050 goals and targets. Yeah, but then there's a lot more that needs to look at the convergence between these. Yeah. So I'm not going to go to this. I just have done this landscape of evolution of the understanding of sustainable development, which I'll not go into today. But just to understand that we keep on looking at the 3 dimensions, but keep on pulling it to one side and keep the wedges according to the advantages of governments or regions or organizations, entities that favors, now say the WTO and its role in the sustainable development goals is not very clear. And trade is not very clear. Trade is kept away very carefully from the SDGs. So that I'm rushing through some so that this is the context setting only. And we still, the saddest part of all of this is that, to me, this is the only picture can't remember his name, from UN Desa, when he started this. I'll show you the mappings that we were doing. It took a little bit of time for the UN system to understand the interlinkages between the 169 targets. Now, why I showed the polycrisis mapping is that for more structured institutional understanding and policy planning understanding, that processes, issues, and solutions are linked with each other, and you can't find, if you fragment them, silo them, and trying to find siloed answers, you're not going to find solutions. You're going to find patchwork that you do. I'll show you how things happen down in reality. Okay. This is when the process started in 2016. When I was asked to plan Sri Lanka's SDG blueprint and a roadmap, the first thing that we did was we tried to figure out who's responsible for implementing the SDGs. And we found that at that time, 2016, okay, Sri Lanka had 51 cabinet ministries, 100 and something, 8 or whatever, total state ministries, this one. It was a loose constitutionally defined problem that Sri Lanka, and they were gaining on a coalition government. They had to put people in to keep the government going. But that was not the problem for us. We were trying to map who's responsible, because they are not responsible. I'm sorry, don't take me wrong. Not the ones who are responsible. You're official, aren't you? Yeah, so then we wanted to find the agencies. And we asked the Department of National Planning, they didn't know how many. We asked the Parliament, they did not know how many. Because it was growing, it keeps on growing. We found 425. We asked for the mandates of them. They said, no, we don't know, because the minister comes, a new minister comes, there's a new mandate. And so let's say EU gives them money, there's a new project mandate. So we had to put a huge book together and start mapping all of these. So the first thing, 169 targets. I kept on saying this, don't go on the 17 goals, you're achieving nothing, right? You can cluster them. These are thematic baskets. And then we looked at the 425. So I'll give you an example first as to SDG 1 and SDG 13, poverty eradication and climate action. we found under 7 targets, 128 agencies under 39 ministries had relevant mandates somewhere in their portfolios. 93 under 28 ministries. They don't work together. Budgets are separate. You will know the reality. Budgets are defined, allocated for separate agendas, right? So I tried to bring some of the secretaries together. And these secretaries sat around, and in front of me, I'm a plug into the system, not a mainstream administrator. They kept on saying, you know what happens, no? So I said, no, what happens, no? But nothing happens, no? Right? So at the end of the day, let me give you an example. Sri Lanka had always been called very good in its poverty eradication programs, very flagship stuff until the COVID-19 and the economic downturn that we had due to very poor political decision making. Sri Lanka's well-being levels are pretty good compared to all in South Asia. So the problem is that there's no policy coherence. And institutional coherence is not there. Monitoring, evaluation, follow-up, nothing there. Sustainable development. There was no budgets. I was given $5,000 or whatever to create a ministry portfolio on that. So I had to bring 11 of my own interns, 2 from UK at that time, 11 from one university who gave me to create a ministry of that. And this whole of government and whole of society is a funny situation. Sri Lanka has a 3-tiered, I don't know how it works for you, central, provincial, and local. You all also have very similar stuff. They don't work together. I'll show you stuff, right? And stakeholder engagement. Let me give you a very clear example as to how fragmented systems are. Target 1.5 and target 13.1. Target 1.5 talks about building resilience using poverty eradication approaches. 13.1 is climate-based resilience. At the end of the day, we're trying to create resilience of a nation. However you do whatever. And we found that 45 agencies under 25 cabinet ministries are performing, have mandate 31 again in under 14. This was in 2016, okay? And what happens to the process? So a lot of money goes to this poverty eradication. And when the floods do come in, it just whacks all the infrastructure out, creates new level of poverty. You have storms happening on one side, droughts happening just immediately after this period, right? And what do? You do distribution of money, goods to cover up. Planning is a big problem, and we are not transforming. We are just wasting day in, day out. The reality of this governmental system, you all will know better than me. We looked at the Sri Lankan government system of budgeting. We saw that about 88.7% of the national budget's allocations goes to central government. Now, central government also has a very distributed mechanism, district level, sub-levels, all of that. Then we have this provincial system, which gets about 9.5 its allocation. They tell me that it's about 5.5 at the end of the year that they get. And the most likely to work with the people, local authorities get 1.8, which is to do this nitty-gritty stuff. So how do you expect leaving no one behind is by design. Leaving people out is by design. This is where the problem is. And if the constitutional redesigns are not there, how do you expect officials to do whatever they are expected to do by the people? They have to work within certain frameworks, right? So that is one of the things that civil society also needs to understand how to bypass these. Now, I'm not going a lot into this. 2016 at the high level political forum, there was a statement by some, I think ESCAP along with an Asian country stated that Sri Lanka, it's documented, that Sri Lanka's planning for the implementation of the SDGs were the highest in the Asia Pacific region. Why? Because we had done this, tried to get other countries to understand this. We gave them a larger blueprint of a roadmap, starting from capacity building, means of implementation, and partnerships. This terminology was used in the first 4-5 months of 2016 when it came out. And then we looked at how this works. And then we said from capacity building to all of this, we need to have a transition plan. SDGs, even in a 15-year period, needed a transition plan. And first was to make sure that SDGs are mainstreamed and integrated into national policy frameworks. Show me the countries other than Finland or somebody like that from the more European region. Finland is honestly has been trying very hard, doing exemplary. I mean, they are the first country to make climate ambitions legal. Other countries will do their NDCs and no one knows what NDC is. No one understands from another governmental department what an NDC is. National Determined Contributions. I mean, it's why you hire consultants to write these reports. Show me the data that justifies, you know, what they say, governments are committed to do this by 2050, 2030, whatever, right? Show me the information that comes to say, okay, the first report, we have said that, and tell me, show me countries who are going down and declining, they say are increasing their commitments. And show me a country in this world where the commitments have led to transformation and the climate has improved. That is a big problem. So we need to go on this. Okay, that is when in 2018 February left the process, but with a good plan. But on a process, I must tell you that I was a chief negotiator for Sri Lanka. So in 2016, when we were told that we were the best country planning process for the SDGs, everybody expected me to say that, okay, we are presenting our VNR, and ESCAP was all over the place asking us because they wanted to show a country from them. I said, no, why? Yeah, planning is one thing. You know, taking stock and saying where the country is another thing, right? And I basically believe that it was a bulldozing into the system, but the government agreed from all over. So 17, I said, no, we are not presenting, and I didn't. But then we had to present it within the cycle. So 2018, we said, by that time I'd gone, and all of what I said was gone. That was not a political issue. That was more change of bureaucracy and decision making based on certain circumstances, change that. So we had to, now this is where the voluntary people's review comes into play. This whole thing about the 2018 VNR in Sri Lanka, this is where things I think this room I can relate to, is that by the time we left, this whole process of VNR, you will know that UNDP takes the lead in most of the developing countries. I don't know whether they have jacked up the price, but it was $10,000 to hire a consultant to write a VNR. I don't know what it is in Malaysia. That was the going rate for most of the countries, right? And they had hired one, and there was no consultation. There was no database to analyze what they were going to say. A beautiful report comes out saying that Sri Lanka is doing fine. And I have seen diplomats from various countries like Bangladesh come in and say, at the end of the day, I wonder where all those water comes and all those poor people get flooded and die, according to the report. I mean, the ambassador was a beauty queen, former beauty queen. She was pretty, and everybody was paying attention, not to the content, right? And everything she said about Bangladesh was about probably what happens in a beauty contest, to win the beauty contest. Bangladesh, from what we have visited, and Sri Lanka that I have lived in, are very different to even what Jeffrey Sachs is writing on the SDG indexes. Right? So, well, when I was the advisor, all the civil society, academia, trade unions, all government agencies had an open door. They would walk in, we'll have the meetings, we'll have the planning. That's how it happened. And there was no difference. To be very honest, I think we had a lot of cooperation in that and a new culture. So we had to create a platform. I'm going to emphasize on this. We created a platform called the Sri Lanka Stakeholder SDG platform, not a civil society platform. Why? The ultimate objective is to have a collective effort from a country towards the transformation. And a reporting should be on a collective process. But most of the countries, if you have been to a high-level political forum in New York, would show that only a few countries will have youth given opportunity within the delegation. I mean, speaking presentation slots or civil society get in that. I don't think business and industry ever gets anything in that system other than token few minutes. So then we were discussing, came up with the idea that, okay, there's a voluntary national review and probably the world needs a voluntary people's review because these two entities are reporting differently, are saying different stories about the same country. Now, one of the things that we did not want to do was to keep criticizing and going global and talking bad about Sri Lanka. That was not the objective. The objective was to present facts and figures and an analysis and show, okay, this is what the status quo is. This is what needs to be done. There's a gap. Probably these are the solutions. So to date, we have not resolved because things have continued in a very comfort zone thing. HLPF, I mean, those who know this will know, the high-level political forum was created to replace the Commission for Sustainable Development in the UN system. The Commission for Sustainable Development from the 1992 basically was there was no binding mechanism, and 56 countries would rotate and there were deliberations reporting. The high-level political forum terminology came into the UN to give more strength and mandate to countries to report back to the UN, and the expectation was not just was at least a mandatory national reporting, but it's a voluntary national reporting. And read the guidelines for a VNR and don't start blaming the governments alone. Where's the methodology of the Secretary General going deep into how a VNR should be done? It just gives a prescription of a list as to probably what should be there without a methodology. Without a methodology, how do you assess whether the report is right or wrong, the facts are right or wrong, and whether a country is making progress or not? Right? If not, then what do you have? You know, from the government, no one fears the HLPF, which is just another annual motion, and no one takes HLPF serious anymore, because I was not only negotiating for Sri Lanka, I've negotiated with OECD for a new financing architecture. There's no financing architecture for the SDGs, right? They are using the same old structure. And how do you expect countries who are struggling to meet their ends in countries to put in money into this? So what happens is that we came up with the process of creating the world's first ever voluntary people's review. And this afternoon session, I've tried to get few other countries to do this, because a VPR, a voluntary national review, a VNR, gets strengthened by a VPR. If it is done very well, not in animosity, not in fight or whatever, but independently, without compromising, but working probably to strengthen a VNR. If the government does not do it, I will show you how we have done it. Because you don't wait for anybody else in the world to represent people or make sure that it is. And I don't think everybody has the voice or the space or the connections to make that. But those who have those and who go on this conferencing, be part of networks, I think it's a responsibility for them to do. So the process was trying to create these, but I will show at the end how we have created a SDG transformation lab. And why I'm here is to see whether we can, not to replicate, but to get the methodology out and get this process going, which is still a mystery to me who's going to lead this in Malaysia. But I would be very, very happy to work on the process design, to methodology design, to index design, to all of that, which is what I'm trying to do. Now, this is the hard part. Now, the voluntary people's review, what we identify is that a VNR's main responsibility will be reporting on the 17 goals and their take on targets and the data that they have, whether they are performing. So I don't know, Malaysia, I heard that it is not there. I think very few countries in the world have localized, I mean, on a national scale, the indicators. I heard that Malaysia has not done like Sri Lanka has not. There are proxy indicators for certain targets that countries have. The problem with that is that global targets, if you don't have localized measurements, you are going to be reporting something else. Right? Now, there's a huge mismatch in this. How we did is pretty different. The micro assessment and a macro assessment. A micro assessment is about the 169 targets, the 244 global indicator framework, and then we looked at what are the local indicators, if there are any. If not the proxies, we looked at them. So then we created databases collecting data on what the government is providing us information. So the first source always be the National Statistical Agency of a country. Then you go to the others, national planning, to the financing, and all the other agencies. Whoever has presented data becomes formal data, because data is not about information alone. It's a verified mechanical process of saying. But then you will know that a statistical agency takes sometimes 5 years or 10 years on a process to get a data verified. And the funniest part was that their report said that there was no single energy boost. That must be for me, no? Yeah, I'm a diabetic and I need sugar in my system. No, don't worry. I will sing. Right. Maybe some hot something for my vocals. And that for us is a micro assessment. That is why I said that I'm not very happy with the midterm review done by the Scientific Committee of the Secretary General. That gives a single domain picture of where we are. That's it. So the macro assessment, I kept on looking at where this is happening in the world. There are isolated reports, very good reports from different institutions about certain aspects of economy or trade or environment or climate or social issues that we see. But a macro assessment must take into consideration the interlinkages between these targets and the trade-offs that countries are making on each of them, and where the money goes, not goes, leveraging and things like that. Now, for example, a macro assessment is about integration, coherence, mainstreaming, localizing, financing, and transformation. How this happened? We couldn't find the UN doing this. We couldn't find the countries because of that doing this. Governments doing it, right? It's a huge problem. The second part of a methodology that we adopted, because we did one for the A4SD people scorecard. So when we did it in 2018, A4SD, you all know A4SD, Action for Sustainable Development, who coordinates the HLPF civil society participation and engagement. They said that they want to adopt the Sri Lankan process, but after a couple of months, they said that this is too rigorous, and they want to do a people scorecard on certain issues, 1 to 10 or whatever. Well, that is their decision. But a 1 to 10, I explained in the morning also, 1 to 10 or a 0, it's like this. A country like Sri Lanka, whose nutrition levels and the well-being levels were not in par with the South Asian other countries, but at a better standard. Those who have come to Sri Lanka would have known this before 2020 or 2022. Suddenly, our nutrition levels go down because the affordability went down and level of poverty came up. Now, example that we understood from the Jaffna, the northernmost province in the country, is why some malnutrition is taking place is because the price of an egg had gone so high, and egg is the poor mother's nutrition for the child, single source of nutrition, and a price of an egg goes up, the child cannot be given the nourishment. And the sad part of it is that a mother's nourishment, when it goes down, it impacts on the entire system. And the government said no. UNICEF did a report and showed, and they denounced the UNICEF report. But we know for a fact that is it. And what I'm trying to say is that there's, in a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, how do you rate it? It's a discounting. You need to go and give a minus and say that you have gone down. Show me the places. Now, Stockholm Environment Institute have a system of -3 to +3 in a different calibration. But I will explain the process for us is very, very different. Very different. On a -5 to +5 scaling, I don't know whether statistical analysis that you all have done. This is not easy, right? This is not easy at all. So a macro assessment, before I talk about this further, let me show you what a macro assessment is about. So we found 5 big ticket items. Systems change, which is integration and mainstreaming. Political commitment is about a policy and institutional coherence. Continuous assessment is about monitoring, evaluation, follow-up, and review. Leaving no one behind on the subnational level and stakeholder engagement review part of it. And means of implementation, financing, technology, and accountability. And then we broke it down into 30 other items. Now, this is a small organization which did not raise a single dollar. Over 300 organizations, over 300 experts participated in this, and voluntarily. The process was managed entirely by a group of young professionals that I had trained for 5 years from 2018 onwards. And they were given the mandate to make decisions, sit with experts, sit with government officials. They can't take decisions alone, nor can the experts or the officials can take decisions alone. It must be co-created. Sometimes the rating will be, we will ask an expert how to rate a single issue, target. And then we will sometimes bring them, let's say it's an environmental cluster or an ocean cluster or a small target of it. We will bring 4 or 5 of the experts. We will bring related institutions if possible. And then there will be sessions after sessions going on. The data has been collected from both all these parties before and information collected. Sometimes even the expert ratings are plus to minuses, which was surprising to us. So when I call an expert, these are not only those who are academically oriented. Civil society representatives with long experience in the field doing this kind of work, they bring in enormous wealth to the table. And they have even data that needs to come into the official stream. Unfortunately, the system processes do not allow that. So this is not an easy thing. And a VNR in Malaysia, I would like, Indrani, I used to come very much so here decade and a half ago when I was invited to train the consumer movement in Malaysia, FAMCA, ERA. I still remember you guys on climate change and sustainability issues. I always thought that you all had greater potential. I don't know. I'm behind the curve on Malaysia today, but I also saw that one of the things that happens in Malaysia is that the Malaysian government would allocate financing for civil society, which happens rarely in countries, developing countries. This part I have understood. I think it happens today also. Somebody is online. Can you please mute it? Thank you. So I don't know the ground realities today, but I think if there can be the 2 reports independently, that's fine. But a process that is unified somehow would be fantastic. Would be fantastic because it is not a great, pleasant experience going to the UN and one person saying this is what the country is, the other person saying this is not my country. You know, it has become so normal and the shame is even gone. I mean, look, we don't need to go to New York to fight. No, let's fight our heads, thick and thin here. That's what we need to do. Let's fight. I'm not saying fight, but these are all intellectual stuff. These are all well-minded stuff. Now, how this works, I mean, you see how a negative, positive rating has gone, and some of your younger people will do the statistical, graphical stuff well, and it looks nice. We realize that some of the stuff that you do good stuff. If you're not doing your marketing well, you're nowhere. So we do that also. Okay. Now this is something that we were talking because the voluntary parliamentarians review they believe it's a qualitative assessment that they are conducting, information from the system. But qualitative assessment needs to be justified again with numbers. You just can't present anything that you want just on a hearsay. You have to have a context that it can be presented in a form. So the -5 to +5 we brought into the macros, which are definitely qualitative. But it is not a qualitative alone. It's the quantitative and the qualitative that makes this game. So if you look at, once you do this, you get a dashboard. And this is what I'm not seeing. You need to show a dashboard. You should need to show numbers. You may not be always right, but you are transparent and you are learning, right? If you don't put the number here, how can you even critique it? How can you justify it? How can you critique it? So I think it's very important. Each country will have to go through their own. I mean, I'll leave this. This is what we have done for the last few years, since 2022. A voluntary people's review. All documents will be made available, digital copies for anybody to take. A voluntary subnational review. A Sri Lanka SDG 16 plus spotlight. And this is, I will end up in explaining this, the one of a kind, another one, localizing the transformation in the domestic resource mobilization framework 17.4. How, when countries say that we don't have money, it's not about money, it's about resources, and how you recalibrate your resource governance, right? And how you define your efficiency versus sufficiency domains. Some of our countries are so rich with natural resources, with human resources. We are just looking at somebody else's bloody dream and building empires so sky high that even we can't reach for somebody else's, paradigm, and trying to maintain them. The reality of finance. This is why we did this. I'll explain. You remember when the SDGs came out, the UN said there's a deficit of about 2.5 trillion US dollars in the developing world to finance the SDGs. They were talking this billions to trillions jump. The funniest part of it is that after 8 years, the gap has risen to 3.9 trillion per annum. Where's this money going to? Israel is attacking everybody around them. Russia is being funded to attack Ukraine. I mean, these are two incidents alone. In a world that can't provide this, there's enough money. I mean, come on, man, these rockets that they send, it's a beauty, and people are watching on telly like it's one of those New Year fire stuff that goes on, laser shows or whatever, right? That is the kind of hypocrisy that happens in the world. And this is what domestic resource mobilization needs to do. And that's what we try to do. Probably this will interest some of you. Countries need to start reimagining what their resources are and what resource governance is about. Your corporations will tell you how best to efficiently utilize your grounded resources. And your malls are some of the most amazing malls in any country. I went to the pavilion. My goodness gracious me, right? I don't know what to think about it. I mean, it's great for window shopping once in a few months or whatever to cleanse your desires, I guess. But I don't think it is a place. Probably people shop, and that shows that there is another group of people who can. And they will give others also a little chance of discounts for people like us coming from Sri Lanka on their vacations to waste their money, right? And they did take a lot of money from me because I came with my family. Shani and Shashi were here. You saw my daughter when she was this. She's now manager climate change and sustainability for Ernst & Young EY. I mean, she was working with them in the morning. She will come in the evening. So this is something that you need to look at. Let me show you something that hopefully one day somebody is going to pick up. This is a resource mobilization framework for a country. You can recalibrate it the way you want. So recalibrate, reimagine, reorganize, and reinvest. There are different tabulations that you can do, right? I know it's the problem with policy planning is that all have to have 1, 2, 3. It has to flow. This is not the flow. These flows are very different. This is like a combination lock. You need to learn how to recalibrate your own stuff. I mean, decentralization, subsidiarity, resilience, all of this we use in terminology, in our reports. But how are you going to look at the interlinkages between them? That is what we have done. I'm trying to ensure that we can move on. This is what we are now doing at the moment. We are going now into more focused, deeper voluntary people's reviews. We have started on the biodiversity voluntary people's review because looking at the biodiversity COP that is coming this month, and Sri Lanka's based on the Kunming Montreal targets, which are well okay, but I think we need to go deeper into it. Our NBSAP National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan ended in 2022, but it has not been updated. So we thought that we need to give this, and a climate change voluntary people's review is also on the cards. We have basically started on that. Why? Because most of the policies that are coming out, everything suddenly seems to look the same. Why? A group of people we can see who are getting the consultancy do the same, the stuff are the same, and they are subcontracted. I mean, probably your reality, I don't know if it's different. Suddenly you see that the policy development is subcontracted. Call for developing a climate change policy or an NDC or whatever, and the government officials are not the ones who are really doing them. There's an administrative process behind it. I don't know how it happens in Malaysia, but we know that UNDP or somebody will call it and you will fund it or whatever. And these are, the problem for us is not that who is doing it, more than that is where are they finding the information from, how are they bringing the information, because you present any of those policies to Parliament, not even 1% will understand any of that technical stuff. Present it to the public service officials across the border, there will be a climate cell or whatever who will understand it. But beyond that, it becomes very hard. But a climate policy is not about just few people who can relate to climatology. And most of the countries don't have climatologists. They have generalist climate planners, right? So that basically is one of the things. Let me see. Okay. This is what we are doing in all processes now. Let me very quickly say. You remember that the SDGs talk about a science policy interface and a science policy interface, and we are looking at a science policy action interfacing for all of this. We believe these communities and these people who are doing this and institutions need to work together. Need to look, the policy community cannot do their work if the science does not support them. Action can't be progressive if the policies are incorrect or errored. And if the three are not listening to each other and working together, you're going to find gaps designed and embedded in designing for fall errors. And I don't know, you look at who funds certain research in universities, whether they serve the purpose of transformation or whether they serve another purpose, right? Of course, we are happy that some people get money to go shopping, yes, right? But that is not the primary objective of research funding. And that is not how the governments will benefit in their transformation. And the discoursing, the dialogues must happen. So we are now looking at different nexus. Now, at the moment, we are looking at climate change, biodiversity, and economy. Because you can do these two easily. But if you don't bring in the economic part of it, no one is listening to you. No one is taking you seriously. If you don't talk this in this, now the latest some of you will know, that is NBS, nature-based solutions. Look at where the money is going to go to from 2025. I hope you all have done this. UNEP, IUCN, they report that about 80% of the money on NBS so far in the world comes from governments, public funding. And about 20% on certain aspects come marginal from the private sector. And have you looked at what the landscape of development financing on NBS is going to? Private sector. Look at what the funding regimes are. Be very careful. Why? They have no access to the resources so cheap anymore. The regulations are thick. But then the consumer problems, you guys need to be there. Sri Lanka still, does not have a consumer movement. I've been telling you for decades about this, right? I go to any supermarket, come out with a big fight. And my wife and daughter will walk out. They will think, what a shame. It's not about me. For a couple of rupees, you don't fight your fights for yourself, no? You fight your battles for the others and generations. Because, if you take things for granted, you're taken for a ride on generations. And that is what has happened to us. I know, I'm finishing now. Don't worry about this one. I think it's my last slide. Our work is based on building knowledge, a transformation lab. Knowledge is not about what we see, unfortunately, in the course modules that universities or schools provide. The knowledge, I've tried to set up excellence centers, SDG excellence centers since 2016 in all the universities. Not a single university did it so far. Why? All universities are used to linear course delivery on certain subjects, on certain aspects, right? And sustainable development is not on that, right? And also knowledge and processes emanating needs to be co-created. This is what I asked for. Why a stakeholder platform? I think the CSO platform, is it? Would be a fantastic place where you can bring all the other CSOs, but also include other stakeholders. Now, one of the things that I have seen is that how far have private sector and CSOs have continued to become. The dialogue is missing. The difference is that private sector wants to dialogue with government. That is where, and government suddenly wants to dialogue with private sector. Look at the climate COPs that are happening. Who's dominating the climate COPs? Where's the money coming from? There's no way that a climate COP can be funded by governments or the UN anymore. It's all, some of the rich oil companies are behind them, right? And it's in the Gulf and all the oil areas. So the innovation is a very important part, but co-created. I think Denison and team, they have been going into, they said out of 220 constituencies to 150 so far, which is a fantastic idea. And I think co-creation is not just about just a few of us getting together. You need to be extremely open. It does not mean that you have to compromise anything. That is why independent reviews need to have the integrity. You must maintain your integrity. My experience is that independent reviews, voluntary people's reviews are led by CSOs, but inclusive of all stakeholders. There are dangers of it becoming other way around. And if you have collective of SDG-based CSOs and working on that, capitalize on it. If you have that outreach, if you have that leverage, do it, and before someone else gets subcontracted. And basically, one of the biggest deficiencies of civil society is the demonstration on sustainable development. Where's proof of concept for sustainable development in all the projects that civil society does? Look at the private sector, the little that they come up, if it is a hand sanitizer, or a tissue paper that you wipe your hands with. The proof of concept is like this, and they know how to market it, 1,000 times more than the investment, million times more than the investment. So civil society needs to kick it up. Research, information, analysis, and not writing just comfort zone reports to please yourself. I don't know whether you have seen what happens to everything that comes to the UN conferences. Everybody's lobbying a government person. Ask him, it just gets thrown away. It doesn't even, they don't even go through the first page. If you have not said whatever in the first whatever, you get thrown away and you feel that you have lobbied. Okay, so guys, this is the first part of it. I've only tried to give a snapshot of what a voluntary people's review can be, with the hope that Malaysia will have a voluntary people's review in parallel or in coherence with a voluntary national review. In coherence would be a fantastic thing, but as long as the independence is there. So all the best. The surprising part was that no one wanted to ask any questions in between. Last time was that it took me two and a half hours to complete my first session of presentation.
Lot of information and complexities into it, and I'm now appreciating how deep the complexities are. But how is the Sri Lankan government responding to all of this? Because now they see that you have to ask more deeper questions. You have to be much more intentional in crafting the synergies, the policy coherence, institutional integration, but also some of the deeper fundamentals, the development framework that's being given. Is it going to achieve it, or really setting it back? So how does the Sri Lankan government deal with that?
So the answer to a Sri Lankan government will be on the 14th, after the 14th of November. I think you know that Sri Lanka elected a new president who comes from the old rebel group, 1971 rebel group, a Marxist group. And you probably have an understanding of the uprising, youth uprising, the large youth uprising, and it led to a change of government, change of presidential election. What we understand is that on the 14th, it looks like that group is going to have a resounding victory. And at least they say that at least 125, 150 of the standard conventional politicians will be kicked out of parliament for the first time in 4 decades or whatever. And we also know by now 50 of the always winning parliamentarians, some of them are nearing their 90s, I think, are out, and some of the younger ones are also out who have been in the system. So the first part is that, okay, what happens after 14th of November? And I'll answer the previous part also. How do I say this? I'll have to be very careful saying this because the Prime Minister's secretary was given to me when I was the advisor to the government as a director. And that was his first assignment in government or anything on the sustainable development. Good officer, young, still young. I have not met him afterwards, but we exchange WhatsApp notes. Previous part of it. This is what I'm trying to, maybe you will tell me how it works in Malaysia. 2016, 2017, beginning part of the SDG process, Sri Lanka was on a very, very high octane process. The leading was done by the government with us being brought in, and sustainability and these kind of issues were civil society issues. And the experts did come from them, not even academia. You all will remember this, right? So we were able to bring in a load of people And I had a minister, the senior most guy in the parliament who I had never met till he asked me to be his advisor, was very open to everything. And we were very close to, it's karma that brings things positive or takes things out of you, is that when the VNR, first VNR was supposed to be done and presented, change of regime, and we had to act in opposition to that. Since then, what has happened is that the politicians have lost interest. That is where the problem is. Politicians could not see the SDG-based opportunities that were coming globally because there was no money honestly coming into Sri Lanka or most of the countries. The expectation by smaller countries was that there will be load of new money coming into the nations for development, sustainable development. Nothing came other than few dollars here and there, 10,000s, 20,000s, whatever. But there were other money for other stuff which did not contextualize SDGs. That is what I'm so glad that you represent in the government. You're from the SDG Secretariat. Are you the person focal point for the VNR as well? You have the man in the room, right? And I think, look, and I was just talking to Indrani and our friend, where is he? Sandy. And also then during the tea break as to who can bring a collective together. I have not heard you saying anything, but I was watching your body language. And your question seems to be that you all want synergies, not separate. Most of the places that I go to, this is not the body language that I get, or the synergies, not what I get. I would do all my best in the next few months to work out the synergized process. It's, believe me, we need this kind of positiveness from some country in the world. Writing, criticizing articles is easy. Doing substantive analysis and trying to work out methodologies that can bridge the gaps and go forward collectively with your differences should be the way forward. I'm not saying compromise on a VPR for a VNR. I'm saying initiate a VPR because a VNR is initiated mandatorily. But you don't need to go head on. You state your stuff, bring the two together in the middle. Just imagine both of you start talking the same thing at HLPF, how the world is going to take this. The drama is going to be different. I don't think Sri Lanka can do it now. Why do you think I'm in Malaysia? Look, we are global commons, we are global people. And for us, yeah, my country is Sri Lanka. We love that. But we must be realistic. I've been sitting in forums, one UN meeting, and Mongolia was presenting. Suddenly I said like this, you remember the graphics I showed you of interconnectivity? Oh, come. Tani, my daughter, my wife. Can you close the door and come? There are things, Indrani, I think, what we might want to do. Everybody, as you said, everybody wants to meet me for lunch, but I have one lunch opportunity, but maybe we can have other sessions. Why don't you all invite me for tea and whatever also? I also like tea and sweets. What is tomorrow? I mean, who's there from the secretariat inside this room? Everybody had left. I don't see anybody from the secretariat because tomorrow my work in the morning session. Okay, you've been left too. Okay, sorry. Tomorrow our work is going to be on strategy. So the main part of the strategy will be to see how the voluntary parliamentarians review is going to be modeled. This is going to be the first VPR with a parliament from the parliamentarians in the world. And it's called a VPR as well. It's called a voluntary parliamentarians river VPR. And I think now you would know why my excitement is about and why I'm putting so much time into it. The Interparliamentarians Union had done certain stuff. I got involved in briefly the parliamentarian, nothing substantive. So if you do this, fine. But you need to be able to tie with the VNR as well. It's very, very important. If the focal person is in the room, if the focal person is saying from the government that we want to, and I would like to hear from you. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name though. Azimev. Okay, Azimev. Okay. If Azimev is in the room on a voluntary capacity, yeah, and is extending stakeholder engagements, you know, I think, don't get me wrong, we tie it up into a tight knot and start working. But Indrani and all the others, I think it's important that civil society needs to start their own so that the independence is there, please.
So it's not so much a question.
Okay.
It's not so much a question, but maybe I was going to ask Jeffrey to talk about the policy brief that the CSO SDG Alliance put out from our consultation last year in August. It was partially focused on the SDGs. It was aligned with, at that time, our Prime Minister was going to go and present our SDG achievements. And the survey that we did at that forum, we came out that Malaysia was 0.5, and almost, you know, out of 5, we were way below, which is different from what Prime Minister said, 40% achieving SDGs. So the case that you're talking about is very clear. So maybe Jeffrey, you want to comment it, because we already have now the starting pathway of VNR that we've done from last year's session.
Yeah, I think the CSO SDG Alliance, what we've done is we did a policy brief and sent it to the government. And on top of that, also we have actually worked on this beyond GDP, where different paradigms are actually being used. So I think that coming to this now, I think the main thing is about capacity building, whereby every department, they know about SDG and all, but how do you gel them together in the whole of society approach? So I think in this respect, it's a whole different ball game, whereby, you know, like SDG Center and all, have to get everyone with the same kind of values. So unfortunately, everybody wants to work in silos, and everybody is still on the maximizing economic theory instead of the balancing part of it. So I think if you have to achieve SDG, we need this harmony. So, but I think SDG Alliance also has been very busy advocating for policy, but who is going to do the bottom up to make sure that everybody knows, like yourself?
Oh, wow. So, yeah. So, Jeffrey, I think I'll try to tie up the answers, which is not. First part of it is, one of the things that I did, just sharing experience, is that we never created an organization. We created a platform. No organization, no other institutions. We said it's a SDG platform for all stakeholders. And we do not operate throughout the year, all years. We only come on when we are needed. We do not compete with anybody if somebody can do anything better than us. And Normally, we engage everybody on a voluntary scale. When there's no funding, also, that's another attraction. Oh, that's a major attraction. Believe me, that's a different attraction. I think, well, said that you need resources. For me, for whatever the reason, I know the reason, but I've been able to bring in voluntarism from institutions and individuals who have never done that. At one point in life, some point in life, I would have supported or helped or whatever. But on the other hand is that there are vacuums. Now say, look at me coming, I didn't know this till I came, that there is no, normally in a country, if there's a VNR, the first reaction is somebody is going to take the lead in doing a alternative process. That has been what I have understood globally that happens, particularly the developing countries. You can see from Europe is a little different. Europeans get there, they work with the European Union. I was called to Brussels to work with them on the alternative process. But this fragmentation is a massive disease that civil society has. And how do you beat it? It's a very fun thing. I mean, look, what do you want to achieve most is where you'll have to look at it. Do you want a VNR to become as honest as it can be and represent this country? That is if that is your objective, then your VPR is your gateway. If your alternative is going to be to show off yourself at HLPF, which is honestly not even a show, right? Nothing. Then you can see all these spotlight reports coming in. I don't know what purpose it serves, but other than there is an opportunity for funding for some people during a period of time. I mean, don't take me wrong. I'm not talking about anybody, but I think those temptations are very negative temptations. If you can put a alliance together, I mean, I was surprised on what you said, volunteering, right? In this day and age, that is rare. That is very rare, right? And I can see that the vibes in the room are that. What's the time duration for a VNR now? Is it defined? How is it defined? You have till June next year, no? But which means that you have to give it 2 weeks before or 1 month before. 2 weeks? 2 weeks before. But it means that when you work backwards, you have to have a whole series of consultations at the beginning, at the end, before the verification and before getting the thing. Is it you guys writing or is it a consultant being hired to write? By UNDP. Oh, Jesus Christ. No, that's a bad process. I'm sorry, but I mean, it comes out naturally. The worst case scenario is happening here. I'm surprised that what would they pay? $10,000. Is it? Or you don't know? Okay, but it's not great. Believe me, it's not that much. That cannot even entice someone like me. I think the Malaysian government is far richer than that. And the Malaysian government, look at the trap that UNDP has set up all over the world. They are writing their own stuff. Be very, very careful. I don't want to put you on the spotlight or put you in any trouble. That is not the objective. But I think maybe a hired consultant is not for UNDP. That is a wrong interpretation. They have no right to intervene in a nation's VNR. Absolutely not. It goes under the violation of the principle of a VNR. They can subcontract on behalf of the government a knowledgeable person to assist the government in drafting a VNR. That's all that they can do. But you're right. But honestly, you're right. This is what they have been doing. And somebody, I think they can't oppose it. They can't oppose it. Civil society needs to stand up and support the government in this, officers in this. Look, how many officers would come into a forum and honestly say this? You're the first that I met.
Okay. Good afternoon. Let me verify the question that government expected to start to writing of VNR for 2025. Okay. We are utilizing UNDP only for the purpose of contracting or appointing the writing of the document. It is a government document. It's not a UNDP document. So the government owns the document. So the term of reference, the content, and whatever associated with the document is determined by the government, not by UNDP.
I know.
Yeah.
That is the danger. That is the greatest danger. This is a standard prototype. I'll answer after. Yeah.
For those who are online, if you have any question, please write it in the chat box. We will read it soon. So
because we need to move on to whatever we can.
So
maybe last question.
because we have this format, so maybe one of the things we can do in CSO SDG Alliance is get the UN to fund us writing the VPR. So civil society can submit one equal to what the government is doing based on our own TORs, and then use that as a yardstick to see how far off we are from each other. Again, it's not about fighting, but about getting different perspectives from different sources. You know, so maybe the UNDP can fund us like that, something to talk to the country office and the country team, because they also supported the policy brief writing. Yeah.
In fact, you're 100% right, because if UNDP is supporting a VNR, they need to support the inclusion of all other stakeholders. Simple as that. You'll read the stuff and see, but they wiggle themselves saying that no funds. What are they funding? What are they funding?
Identifying the UNDP.
They are only assisting in appointing
Technical assistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm wrong. My experience is that that person writes a report.
That person has in the
whoever institution or the person writes a report. That is where the problem is.
I think, just following from what Kennedy was saying, our policy brief that Jeffrey shared earlier in the afternoon came about also, again, that was our first document that we came up from the CSO SDG Alliance, which has about 80 different groups, both at the policy level as well as grassroots organizations like Kennedy and all that, which are part of the process. We wanted to come up with a kind of a brief to say what were some of the issues that we would like the government to take up. And that's why we kind of broke ourselves into 7 thematic areas. And I think out of the 7, I think 4 of the leads are here. As I said myself, I'm from the poverty and social well-being thematic group. And then we have Fendi, who's from the environmental group. We have Jeffrey, who is in charge of the governance cluster. And then we have Onsen, who is looking after the indigenous peoples cluster. The other 3 clusters are on health, on education, and women. So these are the 7 clusters that under the SDG CSO Alliance group that we have kind of formed ourselves so that we can work across the 17 SDG goals, so that we don't have just 17. And what we did was, when we wanted to kind of have the policy brief, bringing the people's voice forward to the government for the HLP last year, where we then got support, financial support from the UN country office, because that was something that the UN Secretary General had actually kind of mandated the country office to support the civil society's input. And that's how we came up with the policy brief. So that's the background. And I think, yeah, but we organized the meeting. We facilitated everything. We got the the people's voice. I think there were about 100 over people from different segments that covered that 7 thematic areas, even people from Sabah and Sarawak. And I think that's how we came up with the policy brief. And we have shared that with the government, with different groups. And it's there also on our website. But it's very voluntary, only when we need to do something. And I think what Kennedy has said, perhaps we can do a similar process now for the voluntary people's review, where we talk to the UN country team whether this is something that they can support us, but we will have to start that process.
Indrani, let me try to see whether I can extend strategy on.
Maybe if we have any question online, we'll take one, and after that we have to quickly for the live session.
Let this go on for some time because the lab context is already happening.
There's any question online as well?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Uchita.
Yeah. So on from what I understand is that it's a government effort 100%. A VNR is, irrespective of who gets hired to support. Let's say that the civil society raises their hand and said, we want to support the government in bringing in a VNR, and we are doing a VPR. And the VPR process will directly input into a VNR. You forget about who the consultant is or the technical whatever. You work with the government. You have 7 committees. Let the 7 committees enrich the process of the government's VNR as well. The other part of what I have seen is that the government can endorse a VPR in connection with a VNR, in sync with a VNR, where the people's component is done there. And you contribute to this because their one will be a lot based on data. And they will need consultations. And you can do the consultations for them. Right? At the end of the day, somebody writes a technical thing, there are 2 things. No, one is a facilitator, one is an editorial process. The government will chair that process, simple as that. No one else chairs. The other person is a technical person who gives. But the 7 committees and whatever the committees that the government wants will give oversight and insight. Provide that. You bring in the academia, which is already in the room, represented. You bring in the trade unions. You bring in the youth groups, the gender groups, the farmers groups, indigenous groups, all of them. And because the government will benefit by doing that, that is the consultative part. And that constitutes the thematic chapters of it as well. And that is not that hard. I mean, I would be happy to sit with you all tomorrow while I'm doing that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we can extend into other of that even. I mean, where's your office? Here. Oh, this is?
Here the airport.
I profoundly apologize for my PJ confusions. I'm okay. Right. So this must be something deeper between states, right? Yeah. It's an intention between parties, no? And if Malaysia can, and this is not it. I mean, this is a pleasant time to be in a room, honestly. And I don't know, how do we do this tomorrow? So the plan is for me to come here between 10:30 around for the strategy meeting. Yeah, so this is on your one, and we might be able to continue it on this while I'm here and extend it past lunch even, I don't mind. Right?
Something that APPGM SDG
Tomorrow.
So recognize the body can facilitate. Already has that.
somehow, Indrani, I think you guys need to work it out together and don't leave it too late. You all have already done the spade work. You all had done the spade work. 7 committees, a position paper, and the VNR. Have you all started on anything? Nothing. You see? So they will benefit by it. And as long as, I don't know, there will be an interagency committee also. Yeah, absolutely. Now that is when the tango happens, right? But that is where you have a facilitator who's the key person there. Normally what we see is if the key facilitator, focal person is there in the process, other things normally starts falling in line, right? These are, you know, that the bureaucratic stuff, when it is thinned down, the egos are thinned down, things work well. And I would suggest that within the next few days, weeks, you all get into a MOU kind of a situation, whatever you call it, and a collaboration for a VNR. But you guys need to have a clear decision on a VPR though. And please don't use the word VPR if you're not following a deeper methodology. I will attack it from wherever I am, because that's known. I mean, come on, write any report, but a VPR will have to go through rigors of it. I mean, as you said, who's going to collect the data, the groundwork? You will need leaders with experience, but you will need younger people who can run around, do things, get things done. Do you all have a secretariat for that? You don't need physically, you need a virtual.
They have Nation Youth Delegation. I think that they have a big role to play.
You are worried about this, no? The processes are different. You see, we are discussing concept, objectives, and challenges. Right? We are already on the ball game, but activities, timelines, roles, and responsibilities, we are now talking. You can't do it in the morning way. I am hesitant to get into the lab now. I don't know we can do this. It's up to you. You can even use the time to do this, and I'll demonstrate that you will come out with a plan now. If you want to do it now. Okay, good. Let's break into it. So let's do this. What time is it now, and what time do we have to finish?
It's almost 5.
Okay.
So we have to finish everything by 6.
Okay, so we have an hour. So we have 20 minutes like before.
Yeah.
Can we, do we have 2 groups on this or 3 groups? How many people into a group? Because let me do what I did before. I asked people to cluster themselves into environment, social, economic, and governance. People who talk environment more in this economics or what? What? Because your approaches are different, because that 2 groups? Okay, so then you have to cover the environmental, social, economic, and governance in whatever the 2 groups. But your objective is a little different to this. Your lab will be more on how to visualize a VNR and a VPR and the synergies between that. If you can visualize that, I think you're perfectly fine. It's good to have 2 groups so that you get 2 perspectives from groups. So this group, who's going to, is these 2 together, or I think we need to balance this well? Yeah, maybe these 2 together, these guys together, right? So can I explain this then? So the first 20 minutes will be the context and the plan. So the context basically is a VNR that has been decided by the government for 2025, but not defined. The VPR is a proposition on the table that civil society particularly is interested and bringing in stakeholders in. The linkage is that how do we create synergies between a VNR and a VPR? The concept, the objectives, the scope, and the challenges we define for that. Are we clear on what we are trying to do, on the context part of it? Great. Because if you miss the context, all of this goes to a 6. A VNR and a VPR, and trying to build a synergetic process in Malaysia. Concept, objective, scope, and challenges the first 5-6 minutes. Then what you do have to do is immediately go into activities, timelines, roles, and responsibilities. So you all will say, okay, we have done the spade work, initial work, 7 clusters, position paper is there. Government will say that, okay, the timeline for anything to happen in July backwards is a timeline. So you all will say that we will organize the consultations during this period. We will get you the reports. We will get you data. Government will say we will get the statistical agency, the national planning to provide this and that. Roles and responsibilities, who does? There will be joint committees from what I can foresee on certain aspects where government convenes, and you all will sit in those also, whatever the context is. How? People, processes, partners, and resources. Who are the partners? Who are the process people? Where the resources is coming from, right? That is the first part. If you deliberate on this, and we have paper, and somebody will take the lead in writing and presenting and all. And the next one, when it comes, it flows into the next one, we will talk about. We have a timekeeper who's pretty good at that.
So the whole issue of the content that we talked about, the question is whether the voluntary national report
Review
will be VPR as well. So
VNR and VPR.
VNR goes to VPR. So that's the big question. So, and if you can synergize that whole process. So what would be the possibilities? We said the worst case scenario where the government doesn't accept our VPR, then we are totally excluded. The middle case scenario is where then the VPR is accepted as an addendum to the government's VNR. Of course, the best case scenario is where our VPR is incorporated and is part of the VNR. So of course, we want to go for the best case scenario. In terms of scope, at the moment now under the CSO and SDG Alliance, we have 7 thematic areas that is representative of all the 17 SDG goals. So we have poverty and social well-being, indigenous people, governance, gender, health, education, and environment. So here we said that we look at together both as APPGM, SDG, as well as the CSO and SDG Alliance. And then, of course, we talked about aligning it together with the government. So the government, according to Ahmed, is that they are looking at the 5 Ps, which is people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. Yeah. So I think we can already find alignment in terms of scope. What are some of the challenges? For government and CSO, we said getting granular and disaggregated data would be both a challenge for both government and CSOs. For CSOs, we said also the political narrative, what the government would not want to say actually is the real scenario of what's happening. So that would be the CSO, because sometimes just to look good, some incidences may be hidden under the carpet kind of a thing. In terms of working towards inclusivity, we said the government said in terms of government, again, a lot of agencies are working in silos. Here we put dotted lines. We said for the CSOs, looking at what we have now at the moment, we have the CSO SDG Alliance, we have the CSO platform for reform, we have many networks and platforms already. So we put as dotted lines that the CSOs are progressively working towards inclusivity. We are not there yet, but we are working towards that. So where we can kind of already put ourselves together. For CSOs, we said funding and resources is also a challenge. For both government and CSO, time is a challenge. And the last one was government and CSO towards being, how sincere are we towards wanting to be inclusive and having this whole process, not just portraying something good at the New York in 2025, but how sincere are we in wanting to do that? So that's the first part. Somebody else want to do the check?
So I can go and you can do the second part. So we represent.
Yeah, alliance, partnership, go for it.
Government and CSO representative, right? So now you speak as government.
Yeah. And be in the picture, please, together. I'm brokering the deal.
You can explain the top part.
Okay, so for VNR, for the VNR process, we have already started on the government side on producing the VNR. So by Monday, the latest, the advertisement will come up for the consultant. So if any of you are interested, please do look out for the advertisement. So in October and December, we are looking at this the stakeholder consultations with all the relevant stakeholders. October to December. And January to February 2025 is the validation labs based on the stakeholders consultation. So by early March, I think by the 1st March, we are expecting to produce the first VNR report. So this is a non-negotiable date. So by 1st of March, it has to be produced. So between 1st of March until 2nd week of June is the editorial part of the VNR report. So by 2nd week of June, we would expect the submission of the final VNR report. And then by the 2nd week of July is the presentation of the VNR at HLPF. Okay. So that is the timeline.
This is the official process.
Yeah.
So then.
Okay.
This becomes easy for all now.
Yes. So by virtue of us already knowing the timelines, so all of the processes and the things would have to come into place according to the. So the next part is the people. Okay, who are the people? So from for the VPR process, the people would be the CSO SDG Alliance, CSO Platform for Reform, Malaysia Climate Change Group, Gabungan Bertindak Malaysia, EPPGM SDG, and the Yayasan My SDG. This list is non-exhaustive, so it can be added. For the government part is Ministry of Economy as the focal point, Pusat SDG Negara. The leading ministries for all the 17 goals, the state government, the local authorities, other relevant ministries, and the private sector, including the regulatory and statutory bodies. Okay, so that is the people that are involved for the government. Okay. The VPR process. Okay, this one maybe you want.
So the VPR process is first to take a collaborative approach and see if the government is willing to work together. In some capacity, it might be too much to ask for it to be entire, but this already is the collaboration that is working. So how much can be extended over the years? So if CSO and VPR SDG takes lead to contact MOE and see can we be part of this process here and all through. Okay, so the answer is yes. Then we have a hard deadline, which is a non-negotiable date to the first of March, where the first VNR report must be out. And the answer is no. Then civil society has until June to work on it. And then the next step is to set up a working group. So who's going to be the lead agency to front this? Then we look at the partners. So we say people, right? We say all these people, but we also know that we have not reached out to everyone, especially people on the ground. So the plus represents the people that are not at the moment on our platform that need to have their say in it. Then we look at the resources. So of course, the first one is funding. And so we identified that there is a source of funding from EPPGM SDG, which we need to tap into. And then just as an exercise to learn the process, to ask the UN country office, hey, we need some money. And then they will tell us, okay, you need to do this. So we can learn from future. The other way is my way, which is volunteer for everything and kill yourself. but it works. Then we also need writers, we need technical experts. We need to really have the voice of grassroots with lived realities. But we do agree that the government tends to look at the big picture and the granular stuff is missed out, and this can only be told by people on the ground. And then, of course, the logistical support infrastructure like this, so we have a place to work. Then we look at the process and methodology that needs to cover goals, targets, indicators, assessments, methodology, tools, research and editorial and capacity. And for this, we look at your model and we would like to know if we can use your model and adapt it. Because time is of the essence, and maybe going through the first process, we will evolve that to suit our needs. And then the next, yes, this other part is quite important. The government has local targets. They may not represent the targets that we're interested in, but we're looking for ways to align that. And then from the targets, the government already has baselines. So it will come to when we need to do validation and verification, we at least have some starting points because we won't have the time to go and do baseline studies at this point. So maybe we can tap on the government's resources, use the existing baselines, and then put that into this process. Then we look at participation. Who again? Sorry. The consultation. If the process is yes, then we have to develop a collaborative framework to fit into here. Because it will be a first-time experience. We don't know how it's going to work, how messy it's going to be, whether it can work or not, right? And then if no, then we have to map our stakeholders are going to input this because this will be our first baseline. So maybe we'll leave some people out this round, but for the next one, we know who to include. And then the verification. So this one, we feel there should be a third party to fact check all our inputs. And also, we have a term called shock sendiri in Malaysia, which is, to delude yourself. So to make sure that this is not deluding ourselves. And that's it. Did I miss something? Oh, finally, lobbying. Sorry. So the lobbying part, right? So all this while, the government sends their people, they pay for their people. They never fund civil society to participate in that platform. So we want to lobby that with or without the collaboration with government, that they pay at least for 2 reps to go and present at the alternative for the side events, maybe also to fund the side event, and then a publication in mainstream media for Malaysia. Because we're doing all these things, but Malaysians don't know. So Malaysians are not involved in this conversation. So this is part of the climate education for citizens, that when we do a review like this, we translate that into language that is understandable, maybe with wonderful graphics that, everyday people can understand. I covered everything. Yes, thank you very much, Nina.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The first group did all the hard work, so a lot of repeat, but so that will save me some time. Concept is we've rewritten it another way, bridging the gap between the VNR and the VPR. So objectives is to integrate VPR and VPR to design strategies or programs for alignment, find practical implementation of these solutions using a whole of society approach. So that would be the objectives of bringing the two together. The scope was the 17 SDGs. The challenges were first getting the communities to be involved, to participate in this process, and also creating partnerships, particularly with government agencies. Next, please. Okay. Yeah, we need some help here. Thanks. And then on the activities, how do we start building that alignment of VPR and VNR, creating public support through roadshows, stakeholder engagement with the different organizations and stakeholders, timeline to be completed by July 22 until we got the inside information from the group one, so that has to be adjusted accordingly. Roles and responsibilities will be potential people that can take this on would be the CSO, SDG Alliance, and whoever else as representing the CSOs. Stabilizing partnership with grassroots, local councils. Sorry, it's not stabilizing. What's the word here? Establishing. Thanks. Sorry, establishing partnerships with grassroots, local councils and authorities, MPs, and also APPGM SDG, which has a reach already into Parliament. And the process then is how do we find the driving agencies or the drivers or driving agencies to shape such formal partnerships. So the question is, there is a necessity for a partnership, but how do you shape that? And you need the drivers. So who could be the potential drivers? My SDG center was named in it, Azimi. And I think also state involvement like Sabah, which has the Sabah Maju Jaya.
Yeah, I can add something.
Yeah, when do you come in? Elaborate on that.
Last week, LPPGM SDG Sabah, Zina, they met the Sabah Maju Jaya, which is the central agencies to look after the implementation of the socio-economic development, in which under this Sabah Maju Jaya, the pillar, the fundamental of the activity is on the 17th SDG. So our role is looking at the scope of the state in Malaysia, because at the end of the day, we are going to down to the earth, meeting the community in the 14 states. So it's better to have the involvement of the state agencies. So in our example, we are proposing that one of the example is Sabah Maju Jaya, for example. So maybe in Perak it's different agencies. So by having the state involvement, it will make sure that we are able to, to commit to the communities in the particular states. That's all from the
Thanks, Dr. Zakaria. So I think we took this, I'm not sure we misunderstood it a little bit, the concept, but we were thinking not just in terms of VPR, but how do we make it implemented in practical solutions? So we took it a little bit on a different trajectory. So how do we build that relationship, that working relationship into actual partnerships and this creating? And so the process is we needed to identify the right drivers. These are the potential at the federal as well as state level partners that need to have a buy-in. And then, I mean, the engagement then needs to bring them in a more meaningful way to try and reach some sort of a more formal partnership that can be then carried out or implemented at the local district level and not just at the higher level. So, okay, and that's it. My time is up.
I must end up the day with the big positive. This is something, Denison, that I did not expect to happen today. I must thank you. Yeah, honestly, it tells stories of positive public officials and how it rubs on into larger processes. And I will take this story back home as well and into other countries. Second part that I saw is how the civil society reached out immediately. That is also something that you see that all the time that you criticize government want to be head on. That is not what I saw here, at least in this room. The second part was, it was lovely to see the boards held by, in partnership by the government and civil society. Not even a joke. Tend to have this barriers artificially. Yeah. Oh yeah. It flows. It flows. The energies flow. Yeah. Now then, there's something probably, Denison, that we need to take to tomorrow, which I am now thinking. There is a mandatory Why you look, whether she's sleeping. Okay, a mandatory determination by the government of a VNR 2025 from Malaysia now suddenly is being supported in the sense strengthened by one, a voluntary parliamentarians review, which is already decided. The process is matured to a great extent. So tomorrow we are directly going into a strategizing session, looking at what happened today in the morning session, taking that. But the surprising element was the reactions of all you guys on taking the responsibility of creating Malaysia's first voluntary people's review. Countries have tried in running, but failed. And they have slowly subtracted and done little feel-good reports. The methodology defines the process is part of the methodology. Understand that it is not just about a report. It is about a process that engages, that inquires, that analyzes, and which creates processes into the future. This is not about a report. This is not about going to HLPF. So there is a people's review and a parliamentarians review, which supports a government review in a way which might see vice versa, support coming from the government towards the other sides as well. That is what I saw from what has been said. I also think the timeline was very clear now. Look, if the government's timeline normally comes from how the UNHLPF operates, but from what I saw is that you all have decided on an internal timeline as well. So the consultations become very, very, very important. The consultations are sometimes more important than the outcome document. It creates bridges between different stakeholders. It creates bridges between issues and solutions. This is what you need to do. So let's say the VNR, which is the normal story as a VNR, dies after HLPF immediately. That has been the global experience. One thing that in the morning that I saw is that a parliamentarians review is something very, very different to what others have attempted. It is going to the constituencies, rural constituencies, and trying to map the issues. You will be prioritizing them and then coming with the review, analysis of it. A voluntary people's review will have to reach out to multiple stakeholders who are part of people, who represent people. Please understand, not only CSOs or the CBOs or the people in rural areas or the urban centers are not the people alone. People who work in government come home, believe me, they come home to their families and they become people. People in business and industry come home and become people, right? Police officers, they come home and become people and families. We have seen this happen. And how this is defined in Malaysia is going to be one of the most interesting stories that I want to narrate as a storyteller, although if this happens. And the possibility of Malaysia's VPR along with two VNR, with two VPRs going to HLPF must be told the moment that you start the process sending signals out. I'm planning to write the social media thing myself the moment that I understand this is true. But I'm going to send signals. This is a story waited long on earth to be told. And what happened in this room must be noted, significantly referenced into documentation with pictures and recordings. Probably some of you may not understand the significance of what happened in this room today. I have done this many times in my life. Write it down today, wherever in the cyberspace or whatever, how things are going to change. I was watching from the process of dialogue what was happening. Now it is a matter of interpreting it in different ways. Please understand, all of you, when it comes to the interagency stuff, Indrani, the technical dialogues and the approaches are not going to be as cordial as this. It doesn't mean anything. Be very careful, don't take it negatively. Right? The official body language to unofficial body languages are different. You can't expect every official or every politician or every scientist or every bureaucrat or every monk to act the same way. It has to flow in and out. You're going to find different bridges to build partnerships. The moment the partnerships are being formed, you will find different ways of interacting with different people. And you're going to tell stories to each other. And as you said, I mean, there were many discussions in the sidelines. I came here with not expectations, I must tell you, not expectations, but hope. I'm going with expectations. This has been you asked me to share, Denison, what has happened around the world, the snapshot I did in the morning. I don't go for international conferences. 35 years of my life has been taken by that. I created the APRCEM. I don't think you all know that. I created it. Immediately after Rio Plus 20, the hardest regional UN body was UNESCAP. Not to be gone closer to the most bureaucratic in the world. So there was a discussion between Joaquin was part of the discussion in Rio when I said that the regional commission should be part of the UN global decision making on SDGs. They said how Chantaline, who was the NGO person, Tariq Banuri, who was a director Rio Plus 20, we go a long way together. We sat and started defining. And then we saw things happening. So what I'm trying to say is that you're going to define partnerships, collaborations, leave no one behind in a different way. I heard Denison saying this. The central point of the principle that is going to drive you, this I heard from Denison also, will be leave no one behind. I don't think governments intentionally want to leave people behind, honestly. I think circumstances will drive governments to leave people behind because on one side, the global pressures on countries to act, on local political pressures on to act, and officials to deliver on to act, makes decisions. This applies to every stakeholder. Please understand that civil society does marginalize. You will not accept this. Do marginalize amongst themselves, right? And then you were talking about we are closer to getting this. The moment that civil society starts getting their synergies together, your synergies with the government becomes easier. The more that you are fragmented, the less the opportunity to work together. Government can't work with fragmented civil society. That's a danger for them. Okay, so I end it now. The process that I understand now is we are going to come in the morning and we are going to work with the, how do I call it? APPGM-SDG. Okay, I want to bring the dash into it because the dash is the hope that we bring it, the dash, right? It's a link. And we will be discussing this more because I don't think anything, a VNR I said should not, you remember the first part of it, should not operate in isolation or out of context of what is happening in the country or the world. It is inside the context. And that is what we are going to map out how this is. What we are going to take is a surprising element of what happened just today in the afternoon. I think this is a very positive connotation. We take it to that and then let's see how. Probably your request has been heard about the space, the facilities, the facilitation. That will be discussed as well. And I think if I could have, I brought in 14 People's Sustainability Treaties in about 2012 to Rio Plus 20, when there was nothing out there. They were not even the SDGs. I brought in 300 plus organizations to work without a dollar being asked, without a dollar being offered. There were physically at least several dozens of people who came because of the People's Sustainability Treaties to Rio Plus 20. And I believe Denison was there as well, right? If you make this transformation by making a VNR looks really meaningful, it is not about a VPR alone. If a VNR becomes meaningful when the processes like this start happening, there will be hope for the transformation. Thank you so much for providing that hope. All the best to you. I'll see you someday soon, I guess, and work with you.
Thank you very much for the feedback, the discussions, your participation. Sorry, I was in and out because I had a number of meetings. But I think the concluding discussions brought very clearly some of the key points. And I think we take this opportunity to thank Dr. Ujita for taking time to be with us morning and afternoon. And of course, tomorrow is more a technical report writing process, targets, and so forth. Initial paper has been worked out that we would look into the details. Let me just make one or two comments because our representative from our national center is also here. Now, the process of the VPR is to be a complementary one, not a contradictory or one. It is taken in the same spirit as the National Council for SDG approved the voluntary local reviews that urbanists did with local authority. Actually, the council allocated the money for urbanists to work with local authorities, and KPKT took the lead. So there are numerous voluntary local reviews done. And last year and this year, most of the HLPS site events hosted by the government was with urbanists and KPKT. This year, the KPKT minister also went for HLPF because they were looking at how local government is moving it. While many of us are supportive of local government, and I think similar to Sri Lanka, we are caught with the colonial legacy of the district office. So while you have the urban area, the constitution restricts local authorities' involvement. Unlike England, the police, the education, everything is under the mayor. In our case, it's not. So I see it as a complementary process. And what we are seeking to do is to take our 115 mapping reports that we have already done in parliamentary constituencies, take the 8 policy documents that were launched on Wednesday in Parliament, take findings from the 800 over solution projects that were run on the ground with over 500 local actors and community groups, and do some kind of analysis that gives a ground reality check. This morning when Ujita raised it, the process became clear to us. This paperwork is something we've been working, it's now re-editing and doing, but the process is the parliamentarians need to take ownership of the document, which will mean in February when the first round of parliament for 2025 meets in February, we'll have a series of dialogues with them on the draft report, as well as go to the Kawasan in selected number of parliamentary constituencies. We have 4 zones and 2 regions, and we now have base. We have setting up base in Kota Baru and in Ipoh, and we already have office and staff in Kuching and Kota Kinabalu. So using that mechanism, we would host in 6 zones constituency ground, which Ujita raised as validation of ground participation data. That is what we are thinking of. But I think, as in the past, if invited, we will also participate in the VNRs. 2016, I was part of the drafting group. 2016, we only provide input. We never saw the draft document till it was published in the UN website. In 2021, the government changed the approach. It had a drafting committee, and if you see, the drafting committee had a major role, and many of us also wrote, although there were consultants, you can see various points that we can now pinpoint and say APPGM is fulfilling a proposal that was done in 2021. Now MOF gave the money and dijelaskan lah. So we have example, the district one that Yayasan Hazana is involved in on. So there are some concrete examples there. But of course we have, and this is the difficulty we were raising with Ujita, where the picture is not so good when you go deeper ground. Water crisis, sanitation, children's in the disaggregated and leaving no one behind. We can diplomatically write it, but we cannot avoid highlighting. The KP of EPU in 2021 found a good way to accommodate civil society criticism. He took issues and challenges. He didn't put weaknesses and shortcomings. He put it as challenges. So actually one benchmark for all of us is to read the 2021 VNR report, because it has issues and challenges and it has the way forward. 2, we have to read the SDG Roadmap 2, which becomes the framework of guidelines. We have a lot to do. There are a lot of subject experts among civil society, monitoring specific health, now the coming health or gender, or life underwater, the 5 SDGs that is coming up. But it will require systematic analysis, evidence-based data, because you cannot just be emotive or political, and we have to review DOSM data. So the process of the VPR, we are very clear, people will be assigned to the task. The civil society feedback, I think FND was here in 2021, he helped put that, and it was uploaded on the website and so forth, was input to the VNR process. So I think for the alliance would have to decide who or what groups will do and what mechanism and consultation in the process to organize and host it. And then I'm sure when the SDG Center or the Ministry of Economy call for dialogue session, I'm sure universities and others will also have an opportunity. So thank you, Ujita. What you have done is to stir our interest, get us on track, and hopefully we will fulfill the role and task. And in the process, maybe we can have Zoom meetings. If we can find the money, we bring you back, or we meet in Bangkok or meet in New York, and then see. So let's give Ujita a hand. His wife and daughter have also been with us the whole day. I'm not sure whether they are exhausted. They also walked up Batu Cave and came down. Maybe they are sharper and brighter after that.
You will give us dinner, the good one. You will give us dinner
yes,
to get our energy
of course.
back.
We can decide what kind of dinner.
Yeah.
So with those words, thank you, and I pass back to our MC.